All right, everyone. The other day there was a legacy media article claiming that the deep state didn't exist, the deep state being shorthand for sort of the entrenched power structure within the United States. And other nations have a deep state too. One could say that in the framework of the alliances and the convolutions of world diplomacy, the deep state goes beyond the nation state in total terms anyway. Then we had another article, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, what? Did I accidentally get high off a space cookie or something like that? Then we've got an article, an opinion piece in the New York Times, saying, well, actually, the deep state's pretty awesome. Yeah, we're bringing down Donald Trump, basically. The deep state does a good thing. So which is it? Does the deep state exist or not? Is it virtuous or not? Of course, I say it self-evidently exists. We can see this. It's a complex between the legacy media, corporations directly tied at the hip with government through grants and contracts and shit, the bureaucracy, and then long-term entrenched political officials, neolib and neocon generally speaking. One could argue that certain organized religions are on board with like the Vatican, or would be involved with the deep state as well. It's rather unfortunate. It's a many-headed hydra, and it is a malevolent one. It inevitably seeks to perpetuate its own power and its own wealth, and can only do that at the detriment of the vast majority of people in the country, and indeed in the Western world. When they say that it's awesome, what they're saying is basically Orange Man bad. It's just an extension of TDS, and they shouldn't have aired this opinion piece. It made no sense that this made it past the editorial board, very quickly going viral and sparking general ire, including among some liberals, because they're like, wait, what? You're using the terminology that's used by the Trumpers. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to justify them by using terms like deep state or uniparty or something like that. But it's the truth. The deep state is not awesome. And it does exist. That is the truth. The bureaucracy exists. I mean, there are federal bureaus, state bureaus as well. We know that. I mean, you can go to their websites if you don't believe me. Yes, FEMA exists. There's an IRS. The FBI exists too. The idea of the original article, the first one before this one broke, was that the deep state did not exist, and that basically all of the persecution that you saw, like the spying and the censorship and so forth, is just a natural reaction by scared bureaucrats against Donald Trump being mean to them. Like that's acceptable and it justifies the means. Well, not really. Now it's, hey, yeah, there is a deep state. Yeah, it is there, but it's actually a virtuous thing. Well, let me ask you this: what virtue has it brought us? If you look at the net income of Americans over time, over the last 50 years, adjusted for inflation, it's dissipated by almost half. It briefly bumped up during the Trump administration, and that's the only time since Lyndon Baines Johnson that there was actually a net increase, by the way. In fact, I think it was JFK would be the first one, technically speaking. That the adjusted gross income of the average, like the median family, actually rose very slightly over that period of time, only by a couple $1,000s, still abysmal compared to what it was in the 50s and 60s when a part-time job would eventually get you a house. That's well beyond the means of the average person. If you worked 2 full-time middle-class paying jobs, after 20 years you might have enough for a house. Otherwise you just get yourself into debt. Hopefully you locked in that mortgage at a nice low rate, back when it was very low, as opposed to rising, by the way. The deep state is awesome. So people's net worth has dissipated. The ability of upward mobility has dissipated, at least for the vast bulk of the middle class, and certainly for all of the working class. To the point where only a handful of us, like in the millennial generation, are actually kind of making it. And Gen Z has it even harder, and they're going to continue to have it even harder. The wealth is not flowing to the lower echelons of society. The poor are more poor. You can say that the poverty rate has decreased. Well, yeah, if you adjust what poverty means, then, no problems. You throw them some welfare breadcrumbs, and you rob the middle class blind and make them poor in the process. So yeah, like 90% of the population's not really making it. You kind of have to be, well, okay, well, we'll do 80%. You have to be in the top 5th in order to be making it at this point. You have to be somewhere in that echelon. And then you look at the value of the economy. The other day, some liberal was talking about, well, The GDP growth under Joe Biden has actually been really great. Yeah, but it's not trickling down. It doesn't matter if the stock market is higher. How does that affect you? You probably don't own any stocks. Maybe you have a few thousand you day trade with or something if you're, fortunate enough to have money to invest in anything. Maybe you made it. You invested in Bitcoin when it was at a penny a piece, and you said, hee, well, I had $10 in my wallet. Well, you made out like a bandit. Unfortunately, that's the greatest source of upward mobility in the last, 20 years has effectively been Bitcoin. A bunch of people have said, I'll buy $5 worth of Bitcoin, I'll keep it on this USB. And some of them managed to hold on to it until it was skyrocketed a lot higher. You remember there was that one famous transaction where someone paid thousands of Bitcoins for a pizza? And they did it just basically for shits and giggles, and now they probably killed themselves by now. I would be sad too. Yeah, I thought it was funny at the time. I'm not laughing now. How do you attain upward mobility? I mean, the greatest goal of Gen Z, for example, is to become a content creator. I hate to tell you, but the door has been mostly shut at this point. The upward mobility that some of us did obtain in content creation came because we were in the right place at the right time. Now I guess it would be AI. That's gonna be the next break, but it's only going to affect a small proportion of people. For most people, things are measurably worse than they were 50 years ago. Without exception, and that's because of the construction of this massive bureaucratic enterprise that has become basically the main cudgel of the United States government. Look, I tell people all the time, everyone gets pissed at the federal government, but their main sin is creating more and more bureaucracy. The bureaucrats are the ones that abuse you, not the federal government itself. It's the bureaus. It's the IRS, the FBI, the EPA, the CDC, etc., 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 etc. I don't know how many bureaus there are or how many employees they have, but it's gargantuan. It's a giant abyss of bureaucracy. That and state law and local ordinances in your housing authority, depending on where you happen to live. That's where the main abuse comes from. That's the deep state. The government is just the tip of the iceberg. The most visible element is the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. The ones that are actually elected to do things. You're not electing the bureaucrats, they're getting appointed up and over your heads, and then they're screwing up and screwing you. That's the whole problem. Now, there are some bureaucrats, I'm sure, that really do. They show up and they try to do a good job, and they're like, well, the FBI, I want to stop criminals. That's wonderful. That's commendable. Unfortunately, that's not likely to be your day-to-day activities. You're in the CIA. Well, I want to stop drug smugglers, and then you're like, oh shit, we're actually facilitating the coke sale. Oh, well, that fucking sucks. You mean in order to upend this Latin American country that we disagree with, we're going to try to overrun it with cartels, and to do that, we need the cartels to have more money, so we've got to let them run cocaine to Miami. All right, we're stopping evildoers. That's great. Yeah, it happens all the time. The deep state is responsible for ignoring the border crisis. The deep state is responsible for war. Yes, war is wonderful. This article basically boils down to war is peace when you think about it. That's about all. Peace out.